Hello, Bookaholics. Welcome back to my channel. This is Angela, your own Bookaholic brown name. You can call me Angie. In this channel, I talk about all things books. So, books that I have read, books that I'm reading, books that I'm planning to read, book hauls, book tags, read alongs, buddy rates, a lot of interesting stuffs related to books. So, if you are a bookaholic, please do not hesitate from subscribing to my channel, and also please like, share, and comment. Here I am doing the top 10 books of 2021. So, top 10 means obviously a very subjective pick of books uh, that I think should make top 10 from the 58 books that I read last year. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. As I told in the intro, I read 58 books last year and 23,043 pages read. That's not bad. However, I would have loved to do more, but like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I wasn't that focused towards the end of the year because I had a lot of work pressure at work. But it's okay because my target was 50, so it is still 8 more than what I set out to achieve. So pat on my back. I have listed here 10 books and I will be counting them down. Book number 10 in the list is Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kay. Now, I'm a huge fan of psychological thrillers or mystery thrillers, crime thrillers in general. So, this is a very suspenseful thriller and I really enjoyed listening to it. In fact, okay, so I listened to this as an audiobook. This came as a suggestion to me in my script subscription homepage. So, seeing the reviews, I immediately jumped into it, and I was never sorry because the moment I finished listening to it, I started listening to the second one, which is Kilman Creek, and that one was equally good. And I had three more to go. So yeah, sometime this year I think I will start listening to them as well. So the story revolves around a woman called Gina Royal. She is a typical Midwestern housewife, living her quiet life with her husband and two children. And one day she is returning with her children, from a shopping trip. And when she is nearing her home, while she is nearing her home, she realizes that her house is cordoned off and there is a stream of policemen and neighbors all standing there. So she knew something wrong happened there. She realizes that somebody had rammed in their car or truck or something into their garage. Realizing that she is kind of angry, and she just want to make sure that her husband is safe. But then she realizes that she is being treated as a suspect, not as a victim. And then she finds out why. It's because when this driver rammed his truck or his vehicle into the garage, the secret of the garage was revealed. The garage was revealed to be kind of a lair for her husband to bring in captured, abducted women, torture them, and kill them. Basically, he was a serial murderer, serial killer. And obviously, she was not aware of this. However, people were not ready to believe it. She is ostracized by the society. She is being bullied. Her children are being bullied, and the bullying starts increasing, and she is forced to, pick herself up and her children and leave this place. And since then, she is always on the run because the moment their identity is revealed, the bullying starts. There is immense amount of cyberbullying, so she has to, flee again. So the children are fed up, they're not happy, and at the end, they reach this place called Stillhouse Lake, which is the title of the book. And once they reach there, she realizes that, 6 months into staying there, she realizes that maybe this is a place, they will have a permanent home. And But disaster strikes. Something really untoward happens, and yeah, a stream of event happens, and you have to read the book to find out what happens. So it was really, really great, guys. The narration was good, the storytelling was good, the writing was good. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So that was Stillhouse Lake series by Rachel Kane. Book number 9 in this list is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, I love this book. This was my first ever audiobook, and I am completely head over heels with this book. The story is amazing, the narration is amazing, the characters are so well written. I absolutely loved this book. Love, 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 love. Sadie talks about Sadie. She is apparently reported as missing by her grandmother, but in truth, what she has done is she is in search of her sister's killer. Her sister, little sister, basically, her little sister Mattie, she was killed a year ago or something, and she wants to find out who killed her because the investigation by the police is stalled, it is botched, and it's not reaching anywhere. She's frustrated, and she has to find the killer at any cost. And parallelly, what happens is uh, because Sadie is reported missing by her grandmother, even though she is on this quest to find her sister's killer, this news reaches a reporter, West McRae. He starts following this story, and then he realizes and he tries to trace Sadie's steps. And somewhere down the lane, he realizes that Sadie is in actual danger. Now, the question is whether he will be able to save her or not. I'm not a YA person. I do not generally read YA, but this one I really, really loved it, and I highly recommend this. So that was Sadie by Courtney Summers. Book number 8 is a science fiction, and a science fiction written very differently. In fact, this year all the science fiction reads that I had were luckily really amazing. Currently, the book that I want to talk about is Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book is set in the year 2575. There are two rival mega corporations who are fighting over resources or whatever. Suddenly, in the planet where our protagonist is, Kaylee, now that planet gets attacked by one of the corporations, and then they get into a fleet, and the people there are forced to escape, and now they are chased by the fleet of the enemy corporation. But that's not their only problem. There is a plague that's now infecting people in the fleet, and there is mutation that has very terrifying effects, and there is a rogue AI that's trying to take over the administration of the entire fleet. And people in charge are not telling the truth. There feels like there is a lot of drama going behind the curtain. So she is determined to find out the truth, and the only person that can help is her boyfriend, whom she is kind of at the verge of breaking up, and they're not in good terms. So that's the context. But the most interesting part of this book is not the story itself. Of course, the story is fantastic, but it's the format. It's the whole book is in the form of a dossier, which has you know emails, IMs. Um, if I can find it, IMs and internal musings of a rogue AI. So this was a very interesting and different kind of a read for me this year, and there are two more books in this series, and I'm quite excited to read it. It was quite a nice and refreshing read for me. So yeah, that is book number 8, Illuminate series by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. The next book in this list of favorites is book number 1 of the Miss Bond trilogy, which is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. In fact, this was my first ever Sanderson read, and now I understand why people love Mr. Sanderson. He is so amazing, he is so entertaining. There was not even one single paragraph where I was bored. He always keeps you in attention. You are always entertained. Always something is happening. There is not one single dull moment, and that's what sells Sanderson, I guess. And he is a brilliant storyteller. There is no doubt about that. This story, particularly, is set in a place where it is ruled by the Lord ruler. He is kind of an invincible ruler. He cannot be killed, he cannot be conquered, he cannot be subdued because he has that kind of magical power. He is almost considered like having a sliver of infinity in himself, or he himself is considered as a sliver of infinity. And in this world, there are some people with magical abilities who can use metal, manipulate metal, or use the power inside metal, and to fly around or to fight and things like that. And they are called the Mistborn. Most of the Mistborns are, noble born. This place where they're living in, it is not in any way an Eden. There is ash falling from the sky. There is ruthless slavery of this caste of people called the Ska. It reminds you of the times of slavery, or the caste system if you think about India. So that's how horrendous the ground level situation is. And then there is a lot of political intrigue between different houses and power plays and um, betrayal, and there are some very interesting twists, and I cannot wait to get to book number 2 of Mistborn. Next book in the list, oh my god, I'm so excited for this, which is The Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is book number 2 in the Six of Crows duology. I absolutely loved it. I loved Six of Crows, and I loved The Crooked Kingdom as well. And this again is set in the same world as the Shadow and Bone series and Six of Crows, which is the Grishaverse. And this particular story is definitely mostly in Ketterdam, in and around Ketterdam. And I love a very well written high story, and this is what it was. Guys, hands down, this is one of the best YA stories ever written. Six of Crows duology. So if you haven't read it, if you're a YA fan, if you love reading heist uh, stories, then go for it. That is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Next up is one of the very few non-fiction books that I read this year, which is The Kindness of Stranger by Michael Mccolon. I buddy read this with the Brandon's from Brandon's bookshelf. Um, this was an unexpectedly surprising read. Even halfway through into the book, I was not quite sure of where I am with this book, whether I like it or not. But at the end of the book, I really loved it because it gave me a lot of insights. It answered a lot of questions in my mind. It piqued my interest into effective altruism. In fact, that would be one of my non-fiction read next time, which is doing good better. In this book, Mccolon takes us through this exploration of why we as a species who are considered to be selfish, our genes are selfish, only bother about its own survival, ended up being kind to strangers. So we have, International Organization for International Cooperation and international charities and UN and Red Cross and all these concepts and themes of giving, and why we as a species hold giving to strangers as a virtue when biologically speaking that's not that quite evident. So it's a very interesting journey. It starts with biology and evolutionary biology, and then slowly it moves into our social evolution over the past few years, and it is a fascinating journey. There is a lot of anecdotes from history that he picks up and um, uses those as examples to show how and why we as humans ended up having this international cooperation to establish kindness to strangers. And it's a fabulous book, and that is book number 5 in this list. Oh my god, now we are getting into the top 4 and I'm quite excited. Book number 4 that I want to talk about today is The Three Body Problem by Xizin Liu. Now, he is a Chinese author. He is a master of science fiction, and he won Hugo Award for this book. And the English translation is quite good, actually. I really loved it. You know what? I'm a little bit hesitant in telling you the synopsis of this book because I went into this book without knowing anything. I initially listened to this book on script because it came to me as a recommendation. When I started listening to it, I didn't know anything about this book. I just knew this was science fiction. Just started listening to it, and as and when things were revealed to me, I was so taken aback. There were so many jaw-dropping events. I was like, what? So that was really super cool. So the story is set in the background of the Cultural Revolution in China. So there is a lot of political intrigue. The synopsis in Goodreads and Amazon gave away a lot of plot points which I discovered on my own, and I really loved it when it slowly unraveled. I wouldn't have loved those plots revealed to me upfront like that. And I'm lucky I didn't look into any of the synopsises before getting into this book. So I would suggest just know that this is a brilliant book. There is a lot of science in it. It is sometimes it might get a little bit heavy, but bear with the author and continue listening to it or reading, and I mean, you will not regret it. It is so. I think this is science fiction at its best, and it is so underrated. It needs to be talked about a lot more. So, if any of you are science fiction fans and haven't read this book, then I would heavily recommend this book to you. I mean, guys, go ahead, grab this book, start reading it today. It's that good. And I think there are 2 more books in this series. I'm not that sure. I have to do my research. In fact, like I said, I was listening to this audiobook and I was so impressed by this book. I went ahead and bought the actual the physical copy of the book as well. So I have the physical copy which I plan to read at some point as well. Yeah. So that was The Three Body Problem by Shizin Liu. I don't know about you, but I'm a person, who can tear up or really cry or bawl when I'm reading a book and if it emotionally touches me. I'm that kind of a person. Let it be movies or books. And the next book that I'm going to talk about, you might already have guessed it if you have been following my channel for a while. It made me cry my eyes out. I was so devastated by this book. And I'm talking about A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. In fact, her latest book was released yesterday. I'm planning to read it. I'm just waiting. Usually I don't go and buy out books before I get adequate number of reviews in. That's something I follow. So I'm waiting for some reviews to come in and see if it is good or not, and then buy it. Back to A Little Life. So all I'm going to talk about this book is that if you want a very well written modern classic, then just pick it up. Be ready with tissues to cry your eyes out. There is a lot of criticism also going around saying that, Hanya Yanagihara, the author, overdid with you know, the miserable scenes. Obviously, there are trigger warnings for abuse, torture, um, um, depression, suicide, and all the negatives that you can find. There is definitely trigger warnings. But if you keep those in mind and then continue reading, yes, it's a beautifully written book. So go for it, guys, if you love a modern classic. Book number 2 in this list is actually it's a bunch of books. It's a trilogy by Josiah Bancroft. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I never get his first name correctly. And that is the books of Babel series. I absolutely loved it. This book has a bunch of my favorite all time characters ever. It's a fantasy series, and at the end, it becomes a maybe a kind of a different genre. Maybe the last 25 pages or 30 pages, it completely changes genre, I think. I don't know, it's my personal feeling that, you're in this fantasy world, and all of a sudden, in the last 25 to 30 pages, you feel like, hey, he's switching genres, and I wanted more of that. Actually, I want book number 4 as well. I hope Mr. Bancroft writes another book, to let us know what happens, you know after whatever happens at the end of book 3. There was laughter, there was joy, there was emotion, there was tear. This book gave me everything and anything that I wanted out of a story. When I say this bunch of books, right? The whole trilogy. Bancroft's writing, he has a skill to write beautifully. Stanison can craft a very good story, and he can tell it in a very accessible way. But Bancroft can do the same, but he can use beautiful prose to tell that, which is for me much more engaging. I just loved reading every bit of this book. Beautiful prose, quotable quotes. I mean, it's a gold mine of quotes, guys. Position number 2 goes to the Books of Babel series by Bancroft. Here we are, book number 1. Drum rolls, please. Any guesses? That's Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, book 1 of the Malasan Book of the Fallen series. Guys, this book showed me a completely different, absolutely different way of reading fiction, reading fantasy. I mean, can this be done this way as well? And I think that's where you get the interest of reading more and more of Stephen Erickson. He shows you an altogether completely novel way of telling a story, and man, he can write beautifully. To think about it, I think this year was for me discovering authors who can write beautifully rather than writing beautiful stories, right? So most of us can tell a story, but to tell that beautifully, that takes skill. And Stephen Erickson, he is gifted with that. That was book number 1, Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson.